Anytime. What's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, where me and my very good friend Brian over there talk about comics that have been adapted from comics into movies and streaming shows.
Wait, comics that have adapted into comics?
I'm so fucking confused already. We hoping that you like it at X-Men, because that's what we're going to fucking talk about right now. X-Men 97. Hey, I can do that, all right? So anyway, Brian, I was talking about in our Fallout video that our last video got like 1 view for our Fallout video. Our X-Men videos are doing better than normal, though.
2? 3?
Yes, 2 views.
Double. 200, 100% increase. That's
we almost have a full Wolverine claw set.
Yes.
Yeah. So
we get to 9?
Oh, yes, there you go, Nightcrawler. Great memorable moments and lines in the last episode. Did you like Tolerance's Exception Part 2 as much as the last one?
I don't know. Maybe a little less. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's hard to say. There's so many things happening. It's almost hard to separate the events of these episodes because they're so intertwined, time wise.
Yeah.
But I did like the episode, of course. I cried my manly tears several times.
Yes. I don't blame you. I think when you compare the 2 episodes, the first episode, part 1, had higher highs. And I think this one had high moments, but a lot of it is like, oh, it's the comic. It's the same thing. I think that's what this episode is like, whereas the last one had sort of higher emotional highs.
Yeah. I am very curious what happens the next episode.
Oh my God. Jesus.
Because I feel like where the comics were, I guess really we haven't fully resolved what the Gold Team was doing yet.
Right.
And I guess maybe the focus will be over there. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's got to be room for epilogue. I feel like this show is going to do that. Like they're not just going to end at the climax of it and just say that's it. Like they're going to give you a little breathing room afterwards, I think.
Yeah, honestly, I thought that this episode was going to be sort of like the climax of the battles, and then the last episode was going to be an epilogue. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I mean, it still might, but why don't we go through like what chronologically happens in this episode first?
Sure.
And then we'll get to that ending. So you already mentioned Gold Team. Probably one of the greatest things in this, one of those, hey, it's the comic moments, is that there's a blue team and a gold team.
Yeah. And of course, we have Cyclops on the blue team and Storm on the gold team. Storm and Jean on the gold team. Obviously, we can't do the exact lineups from those comics, but close enough.
They come pretty close. Like on the gold team, they have Storm and Jean Grey, and then they have Cable as kind of like a replacement for Bishop.
Yeah.
As like a time-to-placed guy. Then I think Forge was on the gold team in the 90s.
He might have been, yeah, but we're missing like Colossus,
and
Angel, Iceman.
Yeah.
So those kind of people.
Yeah, and then blue team is, from what I remember from the 90s, it's like Cyclops, Gambit, Rogue, Psylocke, and then Beast.
Yeah.
And Wolverine.
Oh, no, Beast might be blue.
Yeah. Blue is Cyclops, Rogue, Gambit, Beast, Jubilee, I think, is on.
Jubilee, Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was always the team that, if you're comparing the two, it's like, oh, that one,
Yeah.
And that's when you had like just X-Men, and then you had Uncanny X-Men too. Yeah. So they split up into 2 teams. Professor X is back, and the mission is for them to go to the gold team's going to go to Bastion's headquarters and try to take him out, and then the blue team is going to go to Asteroid M. And I was going to ask you, you've been watching the original cartoon. Is Asteroid M in the original cartoon?
Yeah, no, they do that whole thing with Asteroid M and the Acolytes, with oh my God, I forgot his name.
Fabian Cortez.
Yeah, they do that whole arc. It's a 2-part episode there, and so that they did go there.
Does Colossus join the Acolytes or Acolytes?
No,
sorry,
he's only in 2 episodes in the entire show. So,
Jesus.
I think Rogue going with Magneto is kind of the placeholder for that there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can guess the 2 what that Colossus is in. There's one in the very beginning when he kind of fights the Juggernaut, and then there's one with Omega Red.
Yep, those are the two.
Gotcha. So another character, speaking of Colossus, his girlfriend at points, Katie Pryde. Oh shit, I got the wrong Pride. Kitty Pryde is she's not in the original cartoon, right?
No, I mean she's the like the child companion of Wolverine insert, and that role was filled by Jubilee for this show. So, but I mean, if I had to pick a favorite child companion of Wolverine, I probably would have picked Kitty.
Yeah. Do you think that they'll do this thing where they bring her onto this show and it's kind of like, oh, she was on the X-Men, but just in a part we never saw?
Yeah, like retcon it. Yeah, I would like that. I do like Kitty a lot as a character. And I at least need her to call Professor Xavier a jerk at some point.
Yes. When they show, like when you watch the show in the 90s, it kind of felt like the team that you have was the team that was always Xavier's team. But then with this show, they show the First Class in their original First Class uniforms. And so, like, I wonder if they would make it that it kind of matches the comic book continuity a little bit more, where there was maybe some New Mutants at one point too, you know?
Yeah, it's hard because they've clearly jumbled up events in this year, because like we've seen so many comic stories referenced from the 80s happening after things in the 90s. So they could really do anything here, and if they wanted to. And I think I hope there's room for characters like Kitty or even Colossus to come back. I really hope we get Emma later down the road in a more starring role.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that too, because you could kind of do a Gen X or Generation X thing too, but like the Generation X stuff.
Banshee dead.
Oh yeah, Banshee didn't get obliterated. That is true. Yeah, you do. That is a really good point. But I was gonna say, because they did the phalanx on the cartoon, and then like the Bastion stuff is after Generation X too. So I know what you're saying. Like they're jumping around with time and stuff. But
well, I mean, even so, when I was reading more about Bastion last week, he came after a big event that I think these events are going to lead up to. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think that's going to be what's in the next episode, because that's way too rushed.
Oh yeah. Totally agree. And we're going to talk about that in detail in a minute too.
Yeah.
But while we're talking about Kitty Pryde, let's talk about Pride of the X-Men. So there is a big Pride of the X-Men reference in this.
Yes. Essentially, the pilot of the Pride of the X-Men, which was almost like a prototype for this show. There was like the beginning parts of it, which was it was made by the same animation studios that did Transformers and G.I. Joe, Sunbow Productions Studios.
Oh yeah.
And I loved it, and it had a catchy as hell theme song. Still gets stuck in my head to this day.
X-Men.
Yeah. Not quite as good as this one, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the first episode is the team. Kitty joins the team. They go through the meeting everybody in the mansion, and then Magneto attacks, and they have to go up into space to stop him. And that's essentially what the blue team's doing here. Yeah.
And their costumes in this mirror the costumes in that.
Yes, because Cyclops is wearing the original blue. Well, not the original, but his mostly blue costume.
Yeah.
That covers his hair. Wolverine's got the brown costume, which is my all-time favorite Wolverine costume.
Awesome.
Storm, although not with this team, she does have her costume from that time frame and game. We mentioned that the famous arcade game is based on that pilot as well.
We should mention that. Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're just running around. Jean Grey's got that like classic Jean Grey with the yellow mask, which she kind of brought back in the Krakoan era too.
Yep.
Yeah. They look awesome, and it's just cool to see them in action. In this episode, when they finally do split up and start going on their missions, I mean, we see some really cool stuff. We see Morph turn into the Hulk at one point.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool to that, and it's also funny how, Morph always gets taken out like first.
Yeah,
like, he's capable of turning into something as powerful as the Hulk.
Yes,
and they have to kind of like right around that, I guess. So he's always gets knocked out first. Also, his costume too had some influences of his Exiles or Age of Apocalypse costume. At least the shoulder pads. They're no cape, but
yeah, looking awesome. Yeah, and I was trying to think of like who would be his equivalent on the '90s Blue team, but I don't think there really is one like that.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. And dude, you were talking about crying those manly tears. I totally forgot to mention Storm's speech to Jean.
Oh my God, that got me so bad. I don't know why. It's just a very full of hope speech, and it's just great to see, these characters just done well and written well, and yeah.
It's a real good counterpoint to Magneto's speech from last episode. Yeah. Like Magneto does this speech. Actually, I think he does it in the beginning of this episode where it's just like, hey, we've had enough. Like Charles's dream doesn't work. And Storm's speech is kind of like, regardless of what you think, we're still going to fight for ourselves,
Yeah. And that was a fantastic scene, by the way, when Magneto shows up at the mansion. It's kind of like, we tried your way. I walked your path and it just doesn't work.
Yes. And you mentioned already that Rogue joins his side, which makes sense kind of going along with everything else that's happened in this season. And then Sunspot joins his side. Did you think that like his logic for joining Magneto was sound? Do you think that made sense?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I mean, he basically came out to his parents as a mutant, and they essentially responded by having him collared and locked up.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if he can't trust his own family, like, how is he going to trust other people,
Yeah. Did you think that any other mutants were going to go on Magneto's team?
Not enough characters from the doing it. And that, again, that's referencing, for me, that references when Colossus went with the Acolytes in the comics. So they only needed one, really, but I guess, both character arcs for Rogue and Sunspot, it makes sense that they went over there, and there was only them.
Yeah, really good point. And it makes the whole story arc with Jubilee and Sunspot like a lot more compelling too, because that's sort of just been like this little side story,
Yeah, but it is compelling though, honestly. Like this is some great Jubilee content, honestly.
Yeah. Well, you and I, we were talking about ranking these episodes, and you were like, "Oh man, I don't know how I'm going to do that because it's so great." And I said, "Well, there's one episode that's going to be on the bottom. Do you know which one I meant?"
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
number 4.
Yeah, the Jubilee, arcade one with Mojo. But I feel like this turn with Roberto like makes that episode better.
It does, yeah, because it's, and really that was just giving context to their relationship. Episode 4. So,
so let's go back to the action. So, the blue team is going to Asteroid M, and then the yellow team, a gold team, I'm sorry, is trying to take out Bastion's base. All the electronics on the Earth have been put out because of Magneto's, and all of Bastion's people that were Sentinels are like in critical condition, basically.
Yeah, and Beast and Forge think they have a way of reversing it. Well, not reversing it. Sort of making it dormant, but it's going to involve putting a modified collar on Bastion, essentially. They're just modifying it to affect his technopathy rather than mutant abilities.
Yeah. And I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, too, because Xavier reveals that he thought that Bastion was a mutant because of the nature of his powers. Yeah. And so it shows that, like, they went to go see Bastion at one point and realize, oh, this isn't going to work.
Yeah. I'm sure there was multiple people that they tried to recruit, and they had similar reactions from their families or whatever during that. That's what I mean. They're running a school and there's only 5 people in it.
Right. Yeah. That's the one thing. That's what always makes it feel like that team in the cartoon is the original team, because there's no other mutants just like walking around in the school.
Yeah.
So, their whole thing is like Bastion is able to generate enough power. Like his technopathy is making all these Sentinels come to life, and they're fighting against the gold team. The gold team is like kicking their ass. I think Beast is actually on the gold team too.
Yeah, he might be, because I think he and Forge needed to be there to deal with Bastion.
Yeah, but like Beast does this thing where like he cuts off a Sentinel's arm and then like hits it with its own arm. Yeah.
And he had a great joke.
Yeah.
About one hand clapping.
Yeah. It's good stuff, man. And so like they're fighting. Things are going well. Like Cable's blowing some of them up. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Sinister shows up. And we got something I was not expecting. Mr. Sinister full-on hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah. Mr. Sinister fighting Jean. And then also Mr. Sinister controlling Cable.
Yes. Straight out of Sins of Sinister from, the Krakoa era, where like Cable's got that fucking red diamond on his forehead.
Yeah. That was a nice little nod there, I think.
Yeah. And so, like Cable versus Jean, that's a pretty intense battle right there.
Yeah. And it sets up I really like how, beforehand, Cyclops and Cable were talking. And we also got that great joke about what were we expecting Black Leather. Right. As a response to yellow spandex from the first X-Men movie.
Right.
But he's basically talking to Cable saying, like, look, I know that's not your mom, but, she's similar in the right ways and you should trust her and all that. And they get put up against each other as these like kind of very high level telekinetic people.
Yeah. Did you, this is a little side note just for my own knowledge, but did you read Children of the Vault in the Fall of X book?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because it almost feels like a Grant Morrison type book, and it shows like how badass Cable is,
Yeah,
and Bishop.
This is the one with Cable and Bishop, not the original. Oh yeah. This is the mini series. Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, I just read that a couple of days ago. So there's this part where like Jean is just blasting at Cable, Cable's blasting at her, and you feel like Jean might actually die, and she reaches out to Scott.
Yeah, and that influences what goes on with the fight against Magneto because they had him. They had him cornered there because how did they have it? Did Wolverine get his helmet off? Wolverine got his helmet off.
Did Wolverine get his helmet off?
And Charles was starting to overwrite his mind, take control of his mind, and then Cyclops stops Charles because he knows that Jean's in trouble and they need more time. Because if the Sentinels come back online now, before they could stop them, that team is dead.
Yeah, that is an interesting fucking conundrum right there. And so he stops him. It's weird because that end sequence, it plays out almost just like Fatal Attraction, but there's some major changes that are really awesome and exciting. Like they knock off Magneto's helmet, but Magneto's able to get metal over Professor X's mouth, and he's like, I want to say these 2 words to you. Shut up. I love that.
That was great.
Yeah. But then Professor X is able to do that thing with Magneto's mind, and it looks just like the comic where he's like screaming like that, and the blue energy's coming out of him. And when they didn't finish that, I was like, oh, are they not going to do that whole path with like Onslaught and stuff?
I think they are going to lead to it eventually. I think that is what we're going to get somehow. Maybe it's going to be different from how it was in the comics, but I think ultimately we are going to get that. And that's what I was alluding to before, is that previously Bastion and all his machinations came after Onslaught was dealt with. So it's interesting to see it potentially in the reverse.
Yeah. Well, do you think that in the last episode, Professor X is going to do that again and wipe Magneto's mind?
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, I was gonna say we almost have to have a happy ending, but I mean, do we? Can we?
Yeah.
Will the show allow it?
Yeah, it's pretty fucking dark, and I mean that's what I love about that whole moment, because it's like, oh, he's not gonna rip out Wolverine's claws, but they're still gonna do the mind wipe thing. But then it doesn't go that way. Like the thing that like really made me go fucking oh shit was when Wolverine stabs him through the fucking back and his claws are sticking out with blood.
Yes. Something you definitely would not have seen in the original cartoon. I was not expecting to see it that viscerally, because like they still, although the show has a bit more violence to it, they have not shown something that graphic, I don't think. Yeah. And also too, it's something you expect Wolverine to do. Just kind of like, just say fuck it with all the words and just get to what needs to be done.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because when Magneto gets stabbed, he almost does like an anime kind of response where you just see like the side of his face and like his eyes go big, and even almost makes that anime noise where he's like, because Wolverine just stabs him, and then I'm like, oh shit, is Magneto gonna die in this episode? And this is how they end this. But then the last fucking thing happens.
Yep, and it's basically like an exact recreation of the comic panel, albeit different costume.
Different costume.
But like the positioning of everything is exactly the same. That's exactly what they leave us on.
Yeah, yeah. So in season 2, we're gonna get probably what we had after Wolverine gets his skeleton ripped out. We're probably gonna have that same kind of scenario in season 2.
I'm curious. How do you feel about that?
It's like one of those things.
I didn't read much. That was when I took a bit of a hiatus from books. Mm-hmm. So I haven't actually read much of that era where you know Wolverine's that like feral beast sort of.
Yeah. For me, I definitely stopped right around the time that Bastion came in. It's kind of come full circle in my life, and so Wolverine by that point did have his adamantium skeleton back on.
And didn't Apocalypse do that too?
Yes, Apocalypse absolutely 1,000% did that. Like Cable, a son too, and I think his name is Tyler. I think right.
Yeah.
And he is like sort of like an acolyte. I don't know why the fuck I say acolyte all the time, like a fucking idiot. But he's like an acolyte of Apocalypse, and he has his own name too. I think he calls himself Genesis. I think. And
one of the many uses of the name Genesis in X-Men.
Right, exactly. And so he tries to bond Wolverine's adamantium to his body for some reason, and then I think Wolverine kills him. But that is how he gets his claws back.
Oh, how does the adamantium back? So he had the bone claws, but yeah.
Right, the bone claws. Yeah, and that was a big reveal for us as kids because we just sort of assumed that his claws were from his adamantium infusion.
Yeah, but nope, they're just the claws are part of the whole packet, the whole healing factor package, and they just got coated with the adamantium.
Yes, that whole hairy Canadian short guy package.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, what the fuck is going to happen next?
I have no idea, but I just feel like still, I have to reference Bo DeMeo every single episode. He said that this was the setup and this is going to be the final piece. So it's got to be something big and major. I think maybe we'll get some hints to Onslaught, maybe, but I'm imagining there has to be something that in this final episode that's going to top Gambit dying and that sacrifice there. So I'm very curious what it is, what they'll also adapt in here, because I got nothing.
Yeah. Do you think that since Wolverine played such a backseat in this, that we'll get this sort of like monster de-evolved Wolverine that we got when his claws got ripped out, and that they'll maybe do a little bit of cutting between that and then the stuff that we have in Origin, like after he gets his memory back?
Oh, maybe. That'd be interesting. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily want to see the bestial Wolverine. I do find it interesting, the logic behind why they did it. Like they said something about like the adamantium was keeping his healing factor busy in a way, and it's kind of in overdrive because it's not there, and that's why he's kind of almost evolving by de-evolving in a way to a higher physical form. It's an interesting idea, but I don't know if it's really something I want to see.
I get you.
In the show. Yeah. And yeah. I also I just finally realized that when I was reading about that again that we covered The Boys on the show here and in the Gen V show, and I was thinking about the G-Men arc that they had in the Boys comic, and there was the Wolverine analogy was like, I think his name was Groundhog, and he basically was like a dog, and he only could say his name, and I'm like, oh, that's why they did that. That's exact reference to that. I don't know why I didn't put that together when I was reading that.
Hey, that show's coming back soon too, right?
Yeah, I think we got about a month.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we got some good stuff lined up. I think that what'll happen with this show is that when you get the last scene, there might even be like a post-credit scene since it's like an MCU thing now, is that you might get like the hint of Onslaught.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Yeah. But I don't think Jean is gonna die because you already like are saying that Madeline Pryor died. And I don't think that like Cyclops or Cable are gonna die. I don't even think Professor X is going to die because that was such a big part of this whole season.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I always get confused with the whole Magneto Joseph thing too. Like, is it like does he become Joseph after he gets his mind wiped, or is that like a separate thing?
Yeah, okay. that's what happens. I think. Yeah.
Okay, so we might get some like Joseph action next season too.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll do that. And the question I have too is that I keep reading that obviously the show was renewed. And I read that, they want to do seasons back to back, so there's less time in between them. Did they already do that? Is there already a season 2 made, or it's like heavily in production?
Pretty sure I read that Bo DeMayo had written the majority of season 2 already.
Okay.
I don't think it's filmed or animated or anything yet, but I think that he wrote it and that like they were talking about season 3 already.
Yeah, I hope. I guess I just ultimately hope that we're not waiting too long for the show to come back because it's really been a highlight of things lately.
So good, yeah. And we've said this like pretty much every episode, but like if Bo DeMayo is not able to come back for next season, like if they kind of get some new showrunner to come in and like change what he already wrote for season 2, I mean, I don't know if they're gonna strike. Lightning's gonna strike twice, and they're gonna get someone just as good as him to replace him.
Yeah. So, I just hope whatever happens, whoever's involved in it, maybe that director that was mentioned is still involved. Who knows? But I really hope the level of quality just keeps up with this, and this show lasts for 10 seasons, and we get all our favorite X-Men arcs adapted in this form.
Fuck yeah, dude! 9 episodes in, they have not dropped the ball.
Not once. Not. I mean, even the Jubilee episode, I still liked it.
It's probably
my least favorite, but still.
Yeah, I kind of like that. There's that sort of like that Jubilee that was in the system that like survived the beta test or whatever, and I thought that was kind of cool.
It was.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, I think that's it. Unless you have anything else about X-Men 97 number 9.
I know. Just excited for the finale next week.
Hell yeah. So guys, give us some comments for this episode and make sure that you are subscribed to Comic Books Transformed. And Brian and I will be here next week for the finale.